today's workshop is on the lean canvas. And I'm not going to steal any of Brian's thunder about that. But Brian Gladden is our instructor today. And I'm going to let Brian tell you more about himself. But he knows a lot about the lean canvas, as well as quite a bit more that helps startups get their companies going. So Brian, I'm going to go ahead and invite you to take over. And in the meantime, I'll watch the door and we can dig right into it.
Sounds awesome. Thank you very much, Laura. And you can go ahead and record if you want to. I'm going to share my screen. Give me just a second. All right, I think you guys can see my screen now. Very good. All right. So thanks everyone for joining. And what we're going to talk about today, as Laura mentioned, is the lean canvas,
yes, we can
as
see
well as a mindset, the entrepreneurial method. And we're really looking at how can we provide you as entrepreneurs with some tools and mindset and processes to help you better able to get to market with reducing your risk and uncertainty and optimizing probability for success. So a little bit about me. Let's see, 30 years in sales, business development, and strategy, a lot of Fortune 500 types as well as startups, a doctorate in strategy and innovation, and have my own strategy and innovation consulting firm called SI2, or Strategy Innovation Institute. I'm also the entrepreneur in residence for the Sac State Carlson Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship here in Sacramento. So I lead entrepreneurs in workshops there through the university, as well as I do corporate innovation for small, mid, large size firms as well. My expertise is around the leading frameworks for strategy and innovation. And one of those is the lean canvas, lean startup methodology you might have heard of. We'll talk a little bit about all these things. And so I weave those all together, but today we'll focus on lean canvas. So please feel free to throw questions in the chat room. We'll stop at different sections along the way. And if we have time at the end, we can do an exercise, but I want to make sure I leave at least 10 to 15 minutes at the end for questions. So I'll probably talk for about an hour, and then we'll have either Q&A or we can do an exercise. So a lot of content to share. It's not meant for you to become an expert overnight, but hopefully by giving you the PowerPoint and slides, you can go back through it and set the stage for your own research and some other groups that I'll talk about at the end that can help you on your journey. All right, so let's get right into it. You're all entrepreneurs. You've created businesses, or you're trying to create a business. Some of you have been in business a while. Maybe you're pivoting or trying to do better with the current economy and COVID, or you have an idea, you're trying to get it onto paper. The number one reason why businesses and products fail is that we basically are creating stuff that nobody wants. We waste time and money and resources building products and services that nobody cares about, except you, the entrepreneur. That is why 90% of new startups fail. So the question is, how can we reduce that risk? It's not just about being the right 1 out of 10. It's about reducing that risk, get to market quick, testing, reducing uncertainty, and that's what we're going to talk about. Most of us who are entrepreneurs, especially people who like to build things, engineers, we have what's called this innovator's bias, which means that you think that there's a solution that you've come up with, some product or some service, something that you're like, this is awesome, this thing is going to change the world, everyone's going to want it, so I need to go out and build this solution. The problem with that is, well, before I get to the problem, let's talk about 2 scenarios that I'm guessing many of you have gone through. Here's you've got this epiphany, great idea, you create your plan, and you do one of 2 things. You either break the piggy bank and you start building this thing, product or service, and it takes you a while, and you've gone through several versions, you're spending more money trying to sell it to people, and then pretty soon you're frustrated and out of money. The second way for startups is you create a pitch deck, you create some little prototype, and you go pitch it to investors and ask them for money. Both of those are the wrong way to build a business for a startup. You're probably going to fail if you do that. There's way too much risk, and we'll tell you why. So these are the old way of doing things. This is the pre-lean startup way to do business, but it's now considered backwards, at least for best practices. So what are we recommending? What are we talking about? Well, we talked about this innovator's bias, where you, the innovator, have a solution and you're looking for problems to solve. The right way, the less risky way to do that is to figure out what problems are worth solving ahead of time from existing solutions that are in the marketplace. So it's not about your idea, not about your solution. It's about the problems the customers have and how those current alternatives are not meeting their needs. And this we call the innovator's gift. You're giving the customer a gift to solve that problem versus your bias of my product's awesome, why don't you want it? So when we change that mindset, this innovator's gift, we really need to wrap our heads around the idea that new problems worth solving are created as byproducts of old solutions. Every product or service in the world has a problem with it. The question is the degree of that problem worth the customer switching to something else? Is there enough severity or pain that they say, yes, I need a new solution, this is not meeting my needs? Nothing is ever perfect, and we'll go through examples of that. So if you are this entrepreneur and you have this idea, this solution, and you build it and you're just trying to find a problem to solve, well, that's like building a key without knowing what door it's going to open, right? So you have the solution, but really you want to understand what's the problem. The problem is this door is locked. I need to build a key to open it versus I built a key, let me go find out what door that opens. And that's the wrong way to go about building a startup. Really what we're talking about, and we'll get into the tool itself, Lean Canvas, is a mindset shift from the solution to loving the problem, right? We want you to love the problem, not your solution. Because in most cases, what you think is the right solution will change once you get feedback from your customers. The old way of doing business planning was here on the left, right? The old world. We create this massive document, spend months and months of research, 200, 300-page Word document, Excel spreadsheets, reports, and it takes you forever to build this business plan. I'm not sure how many of you can put a thumbs up in the chat, or the picture if you've done it. I've written several of those, several hundred pages over 6 to 9 months to build these business plans. They are completely worthless nowadays. No one is going to read your business plan that is this thick document, not even a bank. They're going to read the executive summary. They're going to read a couple of pages, and that's it. Because by the time you finished with 6 months of research, the customer and the problem have changed. Think about COVID. So if you were building a business at the end of 2019, doesn't matter what it is, and here's my business plan, I'm ready to go, and now you start asking for money and COVID hits, most of what you've done is completely irrelevant because every market has changed. The question is to what degree. Some industries more than others. The customer's problems have changed now. Especially if you're opening a restaurant, okay, now we can't dine in anymore. Well, how am I going to get the food to my customers? Or we're not meeting in place anymore. Now we're meeting by Zoom. How am I delivering my products? Right? Everything's changed, so we have to be agile. We have to be quick and iterative. And banks as well as investors want to see very quick and dynamic business plans, which now is a business model. So the business model is now the new business plan. And what is a business model? So if you're new to a business model, the definition is how we capture, sorry, the definition of business model is how we create, deliver, and capture value. The tool that we want to use to create this business model is a one-page diagram of our business idea or business plan. And that's the lean canvas that we're going to talk about. Versus the old way, the new way of, of competitive advantage really is around speed of learning. Many of you have probably heard about lean startup and being quick and all these things, quickly testing and iterating and pivoting. It's all about out-learning the competition, quickly figuring out what do customers want, what do they not want, how do I build this quickly, cost effectively, and to put your business model together, because it's not really about the product itself, it's about the model. So our thesis, Lean Stack, where most this content comes from, is the creators of the Lean Canvas. I'm a certified coach there, as well as other methodologies. It's really about what's separating you as a successful entrepreneur is your mindset versus somebody else's. Not so much the skill sets. There's a lot of great engineers, people can build things probably just as well as you, maybe they've been in the same industry, but if they're starting to build things with no validation that people actually want that thing, they're probably going to fail at some point. Versus you, if you change the mindset to say, let me go out and understand what the customer really needs, validate with that with them, and then build the solution to that, the probability for success is much, much higher. So we look at these really as two different mindsets. Are you Steve or are you Larry? So Steve is the old way, call him an artist, an engineer. He wants to build things first. He's taking big risks. Oh, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. I'm going to take a big risk. I'm putting all my money into this. My solution's the best thing ever. I know it's going to work. I'm going to build it. And the solution to him is the product, the thing he's building. Larry is an innovator. He's all about customers first. How can I provide value to the customer? He's about removing biggest risks, not taking big risks. And it's about loving the customer's problem versus your solution. And he understands that the business model itself is your product. That's how you create value. It's not the product itself. You could build the greatest product in the world, but if you have no way to get it to market, you have no way to actually manufacture it at scale, you have no channels, no partners, no marketing, no way to capture value, you're going to fail. It's the entire thing that creates value. So a key mindset shift, your business model, not your solution, is the product. And investors, whether it's a bank, VC, an angel, even stakeholders, your board, people who have gone through creating startups before, they want to see your business model, which is why we're here talking about the Lean Canvas tonight. Your business model shows your key stakeholders how you're going to create and deliver that product or service and capture value from it, monetization, in the entire way you're going to market, not just the thing you've built. And that's one of the problems with many pitch decks. Maybe you've created one in the past, or you've seen pitch decks, is that most people focus on the thing you're building, usually around technology, and they have slide after slide around the technology and the features and how it's made. An investor could care less. They have no care whatsoever about all the bits and bytes and how you made it. After maybe a second or third conversation, after you pique their interest, then they'll get into that. But it's all about, what problem are you solving for a customer? Are there enough customers that have this problem to make it worth your while and their while to invest in you? And are you going to be able to capture money from this market? So that leads us to this thing called the entrepreneurial method. This is really the methodology behind using the Lean Canvas, which we're going to dig into in just a second. So it's great to have a tool, but if you don't know how to use the tool and what other things are complements to that tool, then that's only one piece of the pie that you're probably going to get stressed and frustrated, because just putting things on a piece of paper and a model is not going to be enough. So this entrepreneurial method that we talk about and educate people on, it's around Modeling, prioritizing, and testing. So first we start with a business model, some idea in your head, we put it on the paper. Then we have to prioritize. What are the riskiest things in that idea that we need to go out and test? Then we actually go out and test it. And this usually happens several times. This will be refined. Your business model will be edited probably twice, three, four times. That's the nature of being lean, agile, and quickly understanding the needs of the market and how the customer can actually derive value from a potential solution that you're going to create. So we'll start at the beginning, the entrepreneurial method with a business model. So this is the lean canvas. This is the tool that obviously was promoted that we're talking about. If you haven't seen it before, it is the main tool that entrepreneurs use to create their business plan. It's a one-page document. Think of it as an executive summary that tells you, your stakeholders, everyone involved, all about your business on one sheet of paper. So instead of writing those 200-page Word documents on how you're going to do it, it's dumbed down to one piece of paper. You'll probably have many, many PowerPoints and Word documents, Excel sheets behind this as layers below it, and maybe, pages of data on segments and channels and revenues. That's great. But at the high level, an investor and a bank, anyone else, they want to know, do you know your problem and your market and your customer so well that you can simply talk about it in 1 to 2 minutes that a layman can understand it? If you can't, then you don't understand the problem well enough. So this starts, most people will look at it and say, gee, I'm going to start with my UVP, the thing I'm creating and my solution. It's actually incorrect. So we'll talk about the flow of it in just a minute. But when you look at the way this is laid out, what you'll notice is on the right-hand side is all about the customer segment, early adopters, how do you get your goods to them, what will they purchase, revenue. In the middle is your thing you're creating. And on the left-hand side is all about you and your business, your key metrics, your competitors, your cost structures, the thing itself, the solution with features. So think about it as the internal side, operation side, and the right-hand side, the customer side. So where did this thing come from? Well, the lean canvas is derived from the business model canvas. Business model canvas was created by Alex Osterwalder, who started a company called Strategizer. It's one of the leading firms in the world, like LeanStack is, around corporate innovation, helping people innovate their business models, and I'm also a coach for them and work with them. What you'll notice here is it's very similar except for 4 boxes, which is why you could use either canvas, but in general, the lean canvas is meant for entrepreneurs. So instead of customer relationships, it has what's your unique unfair advantage that investors want to know about usually. Instead of resources, it's all about metrics that we'll talk about. How are you showing that you're actually making progress to get to market? The solution versus activities. What are those key features that actually will help you solve the problem for the customers? And most importantly, instead of partners, we have problem here highlighted. There actually is a correct flow to this. So a lot of times people say, well, where do I start and how do I talk about the flow to the lean canvas? We always want to start with the customer. Without them, nothing really matters. And then secondly, it's the problem. So when you look at that, it's really the 2 outside edges, right? The 2 pillars on the left and the right. And then I guess you could, chicken and the egg. You could say this problem exists for this customer, or this customer has this problem. They're hand in hand, but those 2 are what you want to start with. Then we talk about our unique value prop, the thing that you've created at a high level. And then the features. What are those 3 features, as an example, that are going to solve the problems of your unique value prop? Then how do we get this thing to customers? How much money are we going to make from it? What are our costs? How are we measuring this? And then what's that unfair advantage. You always want to leave the audience with that cool thing that nobody else could copy, right? What's hard for someone to copy, whether it's a patent, it's 30 years in an industry with your connections, it's a million, followers on Instagram. That's hard to follow. Number one, first page ranking on Google SEO type stuff. Those are things that people can't copy very easily. What is your unfair advantage? And that really helps the investor, the stakeholder understand why why is it great there's a problem, but why is Tan or Laura or Kim the person to actually make this thing work? So let's look at a quick example of what a lean canvas could look like. So here's Airbnb, right? Remember, it started as Air Bed and Breakfast, and they shortened it to Airbnb back in 08. And when we look at just kind of the outsides, who were the customers and early adopters, what were the problems they had, and what were the alternatives? Now, there's a lot of detail in the middle we can get to, but really it was travelers looking for an adequate accommodation experience for a low price, and people that have accommodations that want to host. They were really looking for people ready to share their residence, it should say in San Francisco, because that's where it started, and earn money for that. And the problem is that it was hard to find cheap, affordable accommodations in San Francisco because there was, always a trade show. There's nowhere to stay. It's really expensive. And people staying in as hotel travelers can't get an authentic experience, locally. And it's not easy for homeowners to monetize vacant space in their homes. So what were alternatives? Booking.com and hotels.com. So there really wasn't a place to go and rent out your room and basically have that marketplace to bring the seller and the customer together. We can, you can look through the channels, the unique value prop, the revenue streams, but at the end of the day, we're really just looking initially at what's the customer, who are they targeting, what's their problem, and what was the existing alternatives. So as we move on, we've documented our model. We put it on paper. We've got it out of our head. We have an idea of how we think we can create some value. But that's your opinion. All those are assumptions you're making. You might have a little bit of data from historical reports or personal experience, but you probably have a lot of assumptions built into that model. What you need to do now to lower that risk is to identify what are the riskiest pieces of your business model. That in the third section, then we need to go out and test those. So instead of leaving it up to chance, starting a business, failing, doing something different, we want to do all these learnings before we ever launch a business. And there's ways to do that. So identify what's riskiest. Well, here's the Jenga piece, right? It's not easy, but we want to make sure we're minimizing our risk by identifying those key things. There are some tools and mindsets to help us figure out what are these riskiest things in our business model to test first. Some of you might be familiar with the idea of design thinking, human-centered design. If not, this is what that looks like. There's three pieces. It's, desirable, does anyone want this? Feasible, can I actually build this? And viable, can we actually make money from this? And when those all three come together, then you have, innovation there in the middle, which is what you want as an entrepreneur. We're talking again about the same thing we talked about the very first slide. Companies and startups fail because we build stuff that nobody wants. So we need to go out and test these things so that that doesn't happen to us. The question is, what do we test first? Well, the very first thing that is always the most important is the customer's problem, which is in the desirability side. Does the customer want or need this thing? And is there a problem? It doesn't matter if we have all the engineering capabilities in the world and we can get things cheaply and we start building stuff if nobody wants it. So that is always the number one thing. And then after that, great, we can look at the other pieces of our puzzle. Does anybody want or need this thing, and what is the problem we're solving? When we overlay these three lenses onto the lean canvas, you'll see that it works out perfectly. We talked about the right-hand side being all about the customer. which is all about their desires. Should we build this for them? On the left is feasibility. Can we build it, right? Do we have the know-how, the technology to build this solution? You know, all the stuff internally really is around the left-hand side here. And then on the bottom, viability. Can we actually make money at this? But we always want to start over here on the right. We want to address the weakest link first. That's the only thing that matters. You can start looking at the other things that you say, oh, I can do this first, and I'll leave the hard pieces till later because I'm not sure how to do that. I'll just start building this thing. I know I can do it. That's a waste of time and money and resources because you don't really know what exactly to build. You have an idea of what you yourself have the skills to do, but it doesn't mean the customer needs those things. We need to test the hard pieces first so that you know you're on the right track. And again, we go back to the lean canvas and we highlight it's always the customer and the problem, right? So these are the things we want to test first. Are the problems we think exist the right ones? Are the segments we think actually have those problems the right customer segments? It could be a different segment. And the alternatives that exist in the market now, competition, what are the problems that are not being met by those things that you think you are going to overcome? When we look at just the left and right hand side to focus on prioritizing, testing what's the riskiest thing first, we can kind of collapse this and call it the leaner canvas. All that matters is those two pillars, and push those together. Don't worry about the rest of it for the initial pieces. Just focus on your customer segments, who the early adopters are, what are your 3 problems that you're trying to solve. There's probably a list of 10, 12 problems you have. We always want to focus on the biggest ones because people pay the money for the most important problems. They're not going to pay you as much for lower problems on the totem pole. And then how do they solve those problems today? And that's important. We're going to talk about that in the next section, because is there enough pain being caused by the unmet demand now to switch to your product? So let's look at a quick example of a leaner canvas. So here's YouTube. So YouTube, when they first started, it was all towards mass market users of video, amateur video bloggers, and advertisers. The problem was that there was no hosting service, no hosting video as a service, right? They were the first ones. The alternatives in the market were Share Your World, Vimeo, and Google Video. They were targeting teenagers, college students, video hobbyists, and filmmakers, people who wanted to get quick content online and share it with other friends. When we do this, this helps us set up for the testing phase. And now we know, okay, what markets do we want to test, what segments, who are those early adopters we want to try and identify, and we need to go out and verify from these markets, is this the problem that actually they're trying to solve, or are there other problems? So how do we find these problems we're solving? This is a big question. One of the ways we can do that is by looking at these old solutions. And we call this the innovator's gift, if you remember back to the beginning with Larry and Steve. New problems worth solving can be discovered by studying how customers use old solutions. Every product or service in your house that you use now, somehow there was an old solution that you replaced that thing with. Think of a smartphone. What did that replace? Oh, it's a new blue ocean, we call it. It's a new market. Absolutely. But what were the alternatives? It was a desktop computer, right? And a landline phone with a cord on the wall, right? Those are the 2 things it replaced. Those were the alternatives. How do I talk to somebody, and how do I use the internet? And Steve Jobs put both those together. Those were the existing alternatives to create new space. So the pain is, and the problems were, how do I become mobile? How do I take my desktop computer and my phone on my wall out into the world, in my car, on a trip? I want it handheld. Those alternatives were not good enough in the eyes of customers, right? The pain of using those things was so great that people said, yes, I want this really expensive new device. I'm willing to pay a lot for it. If we visualize that, and we'll talk about a new term, it could look like this. Here's your current reality. Whatever that thing is you're using, a product or service, it's not meeting your needs, and you want a better future reality. You're looking for some better outcome. This, we all boil down to a term called a job to be done, right? New terminology for you. I know there's a lot of terms. But when we think of pains and gains and wants and needs and problems, you can put all those in a hat and just call them, what's the customer's job to be done? We all have a job that we're hiring a product or service to do. Everything we buy, we're hiring that product or service to do at least one job, usually 2 or 3 jobs, right? So pick anything in your office and, what is the job that thing's doing for you, right? A lamp, a desk, a computer, but it's probably more than just one thing. And when we think about it in terms of jobs to be done, those problems, it gives us more space to think about how we understand the customer. And it's not just functional, right? This mouse I'm using right now to move the cursor around. What about emotional or social needs? So when we think about jobs to be done, it's really an instantiation of an unmet need or want in response to some trigger, right? A triggering event that didn't meet your needs. And you're like, that sucked. I want a new solution. I want something better. As entrepreneurs, and when we think about what we're building, most of the time we think about it in terms of, what does this thing do that I'm creating? What's the function of it, right? Functional use. And that's fine, but what about the emotional and social uses? So there's 3 types of jobs to be done that we as entrepreneurs need to think about from our customers. Think about right now in terms of COVID. Most of what we do is not around just functional needs, but it's around emotional and social needs. Social distancing, being safe, keeping our friends and our loved ones safe, right? Those are emotional and social, not just functional. Did you have your shot? Are you 6 feet apart? Did you wear your mask? Well, those are functional, but the reasons behind them are emotional and social. I don't want to get my mom sick because, she's, immune compromised, and I have a baby at home, so I got to be safe. Those are emotional and social needs. Or why do we have, like myself, I don't have it here, why do I have a Los Angeles Dodgers, mask on versus just a white, mask you buy from the hospital? Well, because socially and emotionally, I want to let the world see that I'm a Los Angeles Dodgers fan, right? For you Giants fans there. That has nothing to do with the functionality of the mask, but it's the reason I bought that mask, because it socially is saying, this is who I am. And I want to tell the world that, and I want it to be fun. I don't want it just to have a white thing on my face, right? So think about your product or service. What are the emotional and social needs in addition to the functional needs that you're helping serve to the end user? A way for us to visualize this, and this is hard. Sometimes we're like, well, how do I understand the customer's, mindset and what they want? Try and visualize this as a journey, and we call it the customer forces model. So here's your customer, and we all have resistance to doing new things. We get comfortable in our old way. If something's working and I want to switch, whatever that thing is. But when we all have a triggering event, either some expectation was violated, something didn't meet our needs or demands, whatever it might be, some macro level event like COVID changed, my needs. I'm looking for a new solution. So I'm being pushed now. I'm pushing to find and motivated to find some new outcome. You as the entrepreneur are up here saying, I have this new gift, an innovator's gift for you, with a promise of something better, a better desired outcome for the jobs that you want to be done. And we need to then go out into the market and verify from the early adopters and customers, what are those jobs? What are the current ways they're getting things done? What were these expectations that were violated? And all of that can be shown in your business model, your business plan of what you're solving and how you're solving it. Here's an example. I think most of us are old enough to remember mixtapes. So what was the job to be done? Well, we wanted to be able to have music on the go, right? We want to record and play our music when we want to. Well, that wasn't good enough. So then CDs came out. And yes, it's around technology, but the technology is just an enabler to help us get a job done better. So now we had better quality music because the quality of the hissing on the tape sucked. It wasn't good enough. Well, that wasn't good enough. People said, I want to be able to take music with me, and I want thousands of songs, not 10 to 12 songs. I want 1,000 songs in my pocket. All right, the iPod came out. Well, that's not good enough. I don't want to have to carry a device. I just want to be able to go online and play any song I want and have it there online without having a device. And that wasn't good enough. So then we said, well, we want to be able just to tell something in our home to play whatever song we want. So this is where we're at, right? So you see what job was being done. The old way wasn't good enough. Are people willing to pay for a new way because it's getting some job done better? And not just functionally, right? Okay, I have more songs. Well, no, now you have Alexa and Sonos. You're talking to her she's in a British voice. Well, those are social and emotional things, right? Now are you a Microsoft or an Apple person, right? That's very emotional social conversation sometimes, right? So what are the things you want to get done? After we've kind of looked at that journey of the customer, then we need to go out and test these things. Those are our opinions and assumptions. We need to then go out into the market and test. Interviews, blogs, surveys, websites, landing pages, all these different things that we want to test and gather insights from our assumptions. Many of you might have heard of the lean startup movement, which is kind of how the lean canvas got going. We add in some things here. It's not just about building something and then measuring it and learning, which has a very physical device kind of engineering focus to it, but it's around the idea we're going to build an experiment about this thing, product or service. We're going to go out and measure some learnings, gather the data, and then we're going to come back and see what did we learn, and we're going to do it again. And that's the experiment loop. And we want to do this quickly, though, so that we don't waste a bunch of time. It's not a months and months of testing and research. It's actually 2 to 3 weeks. So the old world way of going to market as an entrepreneur was, let's build a factory, build something, and increase our outputs. How many of these can you make? Well, that's not the way it's done now. Now the new world is, what are the outcomes? Are we showing that people want this? Are we getting 500 people to our website this month, and next month it's 1,000? We're showing increase, and of those 1,000, we went from 5% actually signing up to 10%. Those are outcomes versus what are the outputs, how many things. And so we want to show progress and traction along the way. That word traction is a very, very key component. So here's Larry again, the entrepreneur who is more of the engineer, right? He says, I've got this idea, I'm going to make a ton of money, and the investor's saying, no, show me traction. So is this you? Is this how you've gone to market? Here's my plan, give me some money. Well, investors now, VCs, angels, doesn't matter, if you're usually early stage, if you're already post-revenue, you're showing traction, which is great. But even banks say, how are you showing traction? And traction is not just about revenue, but traction matters above everything else. And obviously, we all want to be up here where we're in the hockey stick and we've got tons of customers and we're making money. That's great. But traction is also all the way down here at the beginning. And most entrepreneurs say, okay, I just got to get to this hockey stick really quick. I got to get a lot of money so that I can get mass production. Well, you can't get to product market fit without first getting to MVP, without first understanding the problems and getting a prototype and a basic offer to the market. So we have to walk before we can start jogging and running. And that's okay, because we want to do it with less risk, less uncertainty, and less time than just going out and starting something and then seeing if it doesn't work, spending a bunch of money and time, and then you have to do something different. That's too risky. The normal kind of timeline here to do these things, to get to market on anything, usually is about a three-year horizon is what most investors kind of look at. And if you're bootstrapping it, you have your own money, that's fine. It still applies. You just need to know what the journey is going to look like to really start to scale your business. So back down here, product, problem, solution, fit is where we really want to understand the market, the problems, make sure that the problem that we think exists with the customer, that our solution actually maps to that. And the only way to do that is to get a lot of feedback from the market. And then we can introduce an offer, start to get some customers, and then start to get towards product market fit. One of the tools that we use, and this is just showing a really detailed example of how you can show your stakeholders, investors, even yourself, that you're making progress, is by really starting with the end in mind. You know, what does success look like to you? $1 million a year, 100,000 a year, 10 million a year? Is it a lifestyle business or something you want to build and sell? If we know what the end in mind is 3 years out, we can work backwards and understand, okay, I don't have to have 100 customers tomorrow. Maybe I only need a few customers, in 3 months. And then as I'm going forward, as long as I'm seeing progress and traction's not just revenue. It could be that people are coming to the website, so you're acquiring prospects. It could be that you're getting more people to sign up, even though they haven't paid revenue yet. So traction is just showing progress towards, that funnel, that you're getting people into your, call it a customer factory, that you're getting people interested, you're getting more people to come back, and hopefully getting more people to spend money. To do that, we really have to go out and do these quick tests. We have to do what we call lean sprints, experiments, to figure out, is my idea that I have up here perfect from the beginning? Probably not. Okay, so I went out and I tested my problem, and here is a channel example. Didn't work. So then I went and did this, and yes, that worked. That's great. People, said that's what they're looking for. So it's all about quick tests. How do I get out and gather insights, as well as then validate findings, so that I can build an offer that people say meets their needs. So let's look at a quick example. What does something like this look like that's not your finished product, not your product 2 years out, but is a step to show traction, step in the right direction to show that people are interested? Well, what about food? What about a trucks? So the food trucks are the new norm. Well, in most cases, they are just a test, a step in the right direction to show easily, inexpensively, does anybody want these cupcakes? Do they like my cupcakes? Does the segment in geography, is this what they want? Or is it have the disposable income? Are these the flavors they like? Is this the location that people like? So food trucks are a great experiment for somebody going into the food business without standing up a brick and mortar store with a 10-year lease and tons of equipment and inventory and hiring, waiters and busboys and cooks, where you go out and say, okay, let's first figure out, are my cupcakes worthy? Does anybody want them? And at the price that I'm going to sell them for, which is another part of the test. Here's another example, right? Food trucks. Is the type barbecue, Korean, Thai, Indian, those are my favorite foods. Is it the right geography? Is it the right city? Is it the right part of the city to sell your goods in? Is there 10 burger joints next to you and you have a burger restaurant idea? Or is it something else where there's nothing? So you need to do things like that. And this is just some examples of quick tests after you've gathered insights and run other experiments to figure out, am I on the right track? And am I reducing my risk? So these are not your MVP, right? Minimum viable product, because the MVP really is the store itself. Okay, where am I going to put this store? This really is a prototype offer. You might want to say it's an MVP. You could argue that, but prototype to MVP, stage one. But we don't want to start with that, right? We want to start with gathering insights before we start building something with a lot of cost. And this idea of problem solution fit is your first step. When we showed you the graph earlier, you had your model. We want to go out and talk to people, gather insights, not just believe our own assumptions. We want to define the solution. And usually this takes a couple of experiments. And then we create the offer from those findings. And that offer could be the food truck, or it could be after we reiterate our model, then we launch our MVP after getting some good information from customers. So kind of winding down, the experiment, that's the first thing we want to do to learn. Then we want to create the offer and validate that, which could be on paper, could just be vaporware. Is this what you're asking for, Mr. Customer, to meet your needs? Here's the price, the thing I'm trying to create. You don't actually have to build it. It could just be a prototype. And then people say, yes, great, now let's launch, whether that's an MVP or something that is before that. So at the end of the day, the key mindset shift to using the lean canvas and launching your business with less risk and uncertainty is to love the problem and not your solution, because it's all about the customer and their needs. I'm going to end there, and it looks like, great, we've got about 10, 15 minutes for Q&A, which is what I was hoping for before we turn it back over to Laura.
Yeah, that was great, Brian. Thank you so much. So what we're going to do now is move into Q&A, as Brian said. And the way we'll do that, although we do have a relatively small group right now, but if you know how to raise your Zoom hand, which if you're running the latest version of Zoom, if you click on the reactions icon, there's one of the icons says raise hand. If you raise your hand, then I'll call on you to ask your question. If you can't figure that out, no worries. You can just type in the chat that you have a question you'd like to ask. And then when we call on you to ask your question, you can unmute yourself. So do we have anybody who would like to start us off with a question? Don't be shy. We want to make use of all the great information that Brian has here. Well, I got a question for you, Brian. If people want a copy of the Lean Canvas that they can fill out, where would they go to get that?
Great question. So you can just go on Google, and honestly, you could just type in Lean Canvas, editable version. Stuff will pop up. For sure, PDFs will pop up if you just type in Lean Canvas. So you can download a PDF, no problem. I actually have, I've just created my own PowerPoint, which is editable version. But that's the easiest thing to do. Secondly, I actually had some resources here I was going to share, and part of this answers your question. You can also go to leanstack.com. Leanstack is the creators of Lean Canvas. I work with Ash Moria, the creator, and certified coach for them. One of the things I wanted to promote and tell you as entrepreneurs to gather more information, because this is just scratching the surface, I know, is we have both local services that I'll touch on, as well as a relationship with LeanStack. So you can go to LeanStack, and they have a 90-day startup program. And you could just look on the website. There's free resources. You can download the Lean Canvas for free there as well, or some other tools. And it's a great way to get involved in it. It's an accelerator, a 4-fee accelerator, 90-day program if you want to. It also involves people like me who coach you every other week if you want to do things like that. But it's just another layer of depth for helping you get to market. I also can help. I do my own strategy and innovation startup coaching. and here's my website and my LinkedIn, and I'm going to send you all these resources. And then the Carlson Center that Laura has been to several times. Here locally, Sacramento State, I'm the lead for our workshops, and these are free. And every Wednesday night for 5 weeks in a row, we do a series on really deep dive on the Lean Canvas, on how you can use it, all the different elements to help you with a pitch deck and creating that information. So we have free resources, paid resources, definitely can help you if you want to send me an email.
Okay, great. Thanks for that info. And I will be sharing, with Brian's permission, of course, all the slides from this. And we've got your emails because you registered for this. So do you have any other questions? I don't see any hands raised. Oh, Rakesh has a question. So Rakesh, you could go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, Brian. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, it was a nice presentation. Thank you for that. So I was asking Laura and also you, that might be a question to you as well. So do you work with any investors community or for startup innovators or entrepreneurs?
Yes, we do. So the Carlson Center is really trying to act like the hub for the region. So Startup SAC with Laura, other groups, Small Business Development Corporation. We work with and trying to connect with all the different financial, whether it's a bank, SBDC, grants, angels, investors. So yes, we have connections to many of them. And actually week 5 of our 5-week series, which is last night was week 3, so 2 more weeks, we do an investor panel. So that is one of the links in the resources I'll send to you. It's free to attend Wednesday nights, and we actually will have a panel of 3 different type of investors that you can ask questions to, and they will be providing do's and don'ts of pitching. And it's a really great way to get plugged in during a small audience.
Okay, that's a good thing. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Rakesh, are you in the Sacramento region, or are you calling from out? Are you from outside?
I'm calling from outside. I'm calling from Florida. As I said earlier, I'm a founder of a startup that we have incorporated in India. That's
okay,
with the customers for any businesses that involves appointments and wait times. So we want to make customer service easier along with the business management tool. Yeah, we have worked on MVP. We are currently in a development stage. We did all the research, whatever the key aspects which Brian just mentioned about the product solution fit. We did go to the market and did some research before validating the idea. And once we validated our startup idea, then we went to develop the MVP. So we are in that stage right now, and as any startup or entrepreneur would do, I wanted to pitch in earlier for any investors that would be interested for a pre-seed or the seed round for us. So I was networking.
Okay, well, thanks for that, Rakesh. I believe Marcella or Marcella, I'm not sure which way you pronounce it. You have a question.
It is Marcella.
Marcella, okay.
You said it correctly.
Let me ask. Hi, I'm her daughter. I'm sitting here with her. I had a question. I'm not sure if you guys answered already about the video being available. I know it's been recording. If it's available, would you be able to email it to us?
Yeah, so for everyone who's registered, we'll be processing the video, doing a little bit of editing to it, and then actually posting it to the Startup SAC website. And when that's available, I will send you all, everyone who's registered, an email with a link to that video.
All right, awesome. Great. Thank you.
If there's not a question, I'd love to ask you guys a question. first one would be, has anybody used the Lean Canvas or any of these tools?
Yes, I have used while we are pitching for initial investors.
Okay, so you used the Lean Canvas to document your business model?
Yes, we did.
Great. Did that help you? Did you take that information to help create your pitch deck?
Yes, yes. So as you initially said, even we had what, like 90 pages of actual business plan, the old model, and when we wanted to do elevation pitch, elevation deck, and we came across different options, and then we ended up with Lean Canvas, which was very helpful to to concise everything in one sheet, and that was very helpful. Where the presentation was just like 3 to 5 minutes, where the investor was kind of okay with I mean, if it would have gone with the longer duration pitch deck, then that would have taken like maybe 20 to 30 minutes. But Lean Canvas was very helpful in that stage for us, so it was good.
Very nice. That's good to hear.
Yeah.
I'm curious, Rakesh, or anybody else, have you done lean sprints, right? Experiments, quick tests to go out and validate your riskiest assumptions in your business model?
Not specifically as a lean sprints, but we did go validate our idea even before validating the idea and finalizing that plan to decide to go with that idea as a startup. We did go to the market and ask like 3,000 to 4,000 people what's their problem, and what was the solution that we are giving, and if they need any modifications in our solutions. And so we collected all this data from the market research, and then came up and finalized our solution. So if that's what you call as a sprint, lean sprint, yes, but not specifically.
Okay. No, that's good. That's good. Insight and market validation is key. So I'm curious, anybody else?
Hey, Brian. Sorry I'm late. I got another meeting, but I just joined not long ago. So I hope I didn't I didn't talk about something that you already covered. I did try the Lean Canvas for setting up the business plan in the very beginning. And my actually better experience I have is actually with a product called Glider. I'm not sure if you heard of it. It's glider.io. So they combine the product management with the Lean Canvas. So basically, you were provided with the Lean Canvas right when you go into the software, and then you create different tasks, like do the mom test with your customer, do the interviews, not giving away your ideas, see are you solving the real problem, and then they have different roles in the product management, so you can assign people to perform the test and report back, and then tying that to your particular feature that you're implementing, and then probably going backwards. So it kind of like tied a loop. And I had a pretty good experience with them, but obviously after a while, after the initial phase, we started to focus more on the feature development, and then we just revert back to Jira and Notion, different tools. But that was like really good in the beginning for the Lean Canvas.
That's cool. Yeah, I'm not familiar with it. I'll take a look at it. Yeah.
I'll send you the link.
Yeah, that'd be great. Sounds like they did a good job of making it easy to track your sprints, experiments to features, and with the Lean Canvas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Good.
So Brian, there's a couple questions in the chat. Danyan says she's curious how you can use the Lean Canvas to create kind of your one-pager executive summary that accelerators sometimes require. And then also I know investors, like the Gus platform, for example, you put a one-page executive summary. And then there's another question about using the Lean Canvas for a consulting business.
Right. So yeah, I'll start with the last question. So I'm a consultant, so I've done this for myself. So it doesn't matter if it's a product or service, if you're not delivering value or overcoming, some problem, meeting it right on, you're not going to do very well. So what is the consulting you're doing? Who are you doing it for? Right? Those are the things. What are the alternative consultants out there you're competing against? So yeah, there's a million service businesses, whether it's consulting or some other professional service, which is all these tools are for product or service, doesn't matter. So I definitely recommend you using it. The other question, remind me the first question, Laura.
So it's about, you had said you could use the lean canvas to sort of populate your
Yes.
pitch deck. But this question is, how can you use the lean canvas to put together your one-pager,
Sure.
your one-page summary?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I've done this myself. I'm actually part of a startup that I was consulting with. Now I'm part of the founding team. And I created our 2-page executive summary that we send to investors. And think about it in terms of what are the most important things the investor wants to see first on your executive summary. Well, first they want to know what's this problem and who's the customer market you're going after. So, that should be the very first things. And then the size of that, right? They want to know, well, what's this opportunity, right? You want to hit them with something big. Great. This segment has this problem. Here's, currently it's a $10 billion problem in the US. Blah, blah, blah. Here's the things that currently happen. So you've talked about the size of the market already. Our solution is, and then normally you follow that flow that I showed you. So next is, here's our solution, our UVP. So they want to know, obviously, that up front, what you're doing. And here are the solution features that we have, that are unique in solving the problems. And then you can get into just, summary. Okay, our channels of distribution are X, Y, and Z. Apple. I'm sorry. E-commerce on our website, or Amazon, or a brick and mortar store. Right? They want to know how you're going to sell it. We have a 35% profit margin. So now you're talking about your costs, and it's a subscription model at $20 a month, whatever it might be. So now you're talking cost and revenue. So just work your way through the flow, just like I showed you on the one slide, because you want to talk about the most important things first: the customer, the problem, size of the market, and your UVP. The things that are not in here that we teach at the Sac State Carlson Center that are in the pitch deck that I'm assuming Rakesh has in his, is the team, why you, what's your experience, what you're looking for, right, money-wise, what you're going to use it for, and your your unique advantages, which is in here, but we haven't talked too much about it. Why you, what, and the team. So those should be in there as well, so that you're highlighting how great you are and your experience, and then what the money's going to be used for. So it's a great tool because you've summarized it already. Now all you have to do is just write it into Word form in a few paragraphs.
Great. It's an outline, basically. The lean canvas is really more for you to understand your business than a document that you would give to an outsider, would you say?
Yeah, I'd say normally, right, that's the case. So if you are going to send it to somebody, you obviously have enough descriptor words in your lean canvas to make it make sense, which is fine to send it. Normally you're probably going to present it to someone like on a Zoom or in person, so it makes sense. I actually, when I'm presenting it, I'll use pictures. So, if you were using the lean canvas or business model canvas and you had pictures, icons versus words, it's more impactful, right? More emotional. So that's a great way to use the tool as well if you're going to present it.
Yeah. So my first experience with the canvas was in a startup weekend. So, all right. Do we have other questions for Brian? Or Brian, do you have questions for us?
I think you guys answered mine. Just wanted to, I'd love to see, well, I guess quickly, last question would be, what were any key insights that you guys took away? I'd love to know the good, or what didn't make, sense that maybe next time I can dig into more, and just to make sure I know what didn't make sense.
I wanted to add, what doesn't make sense for me is I'm formophobic. So I get freaked out when I have forms to fill out and I write big. But the way we did the canvas was everyone had sticky notes that they got to write on and, stick it in the appropriate part in the canvas. And then we distilled that all down, and have the person with the neatest handwriting, fill out the actual canvas, but you're not limited by the space on the paper when you're brainstorming and looking into these ideas.
Gotcha.
Other feedback? What were some of your key insights? You guys are quiet.
Yogesh here.
Okay.
Yeah, it was good. I learned a lot than what I did earlier on my previous canvas, lean canvas. So there were items which you spoke that we didn't do previously. Even though we have already into development stage, there are some items which we didn't do that you already explained in this presentation. So it was good that we can go back and relook into those items and also update our link canvas for our future fundraising events. So that was good. Thanks for the presentation.
So Brian, do you have any suggestions? I know Tanya is a restaurant owner and it's been closed during the pandemic and they're looking to reopen it. What are some ways they could use the lean canvas or the principles on the lean canvas to strategize about reopening?
Yeah, I would first, starting with, filling it out, but the problems. So COVID has changed, right? That's an easy one. The restaurant business, now the problem is we can't be inside as much, or we have to be less capacity, or we have to people wear masks, or whatever it might be. There are some brainstorming tools that are outside of Lean Canvas, but they're complementary. It's design thinking. Design thinking, one of the things that's part of that is brainstorming. And that's what I talked about last night, even on our workshop, is if you're brainstorming around how do I solve these new problems that have come up. So the problem is, people can't be in my restaurant. The problem is I don't have any, drivers or a fleet of cars to deliver stuff. Great, then do some things like brainstorming to be, creative or disruptive, or to think outside. And that will potentially help you. And as an example, one of the ones I used last night, which is a real example of during COVID, a New York pizza restaurant, instead of you hiring Grubhub and DoorDash and Uber Eats to deliver their food, they kept the employees, the busboys, the waiters, and the bartenders to deliver the pizzas, because everybody was regionally, right, in their city who was buying their stuff. So they wanted to see a familiar face. They wanted to keep those people employed. They wanted to keep the consumer experience high because everyone knew them in the local community. Another one that the same group did is in the mornings, because they weren't open for business until lunch and dinner, they rented out their kitchens for other people to come use, as well as baking bread and things for like either homeless or bread to sell to other groups who needed it. So you can do things that are very creative, looking around what are your core capabilities, the assets you have, how can you make money by pivoting to do something to a different customer segment. So when you look at your business model, you have ways to innovate your model. You can innovate the segments, you can innovate how you get to the people, channels, maybe it's through distributors versus brick and mortar. You have now problems that you could solve, different problems, right? So there's a lot of different ways to innovate your business model as a restaurant if you look at it from a kind of a brainstorming and what else can we use our assets for.
Those are great ideas. And I remember reading during the pandemic that there was this big trend towards what they were calling ghost kitchens, which people would rent restaurant kitchens for for doing their own food delivery or catering services or things like that. So people were getting really creative about using the equipment and things of that nature. I think Marcella said she's getting ready to open a restaurant too. So we got a couple of people in the restaurant business.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, good luck, and I hope it goes really well for you. I know it's a tough business in general.
So Kim says upper crust has a single slice. takeout window and have it open on Broadway. Oh, it's an idea for you, Tanya. Yeah, actually, you know what? Now that Tim mentions that, I have eaten at Upper Crust. I think, is it right across from the IMAX theater? So, okay, yeah, I've eaten there actually a number of times. So, all right. What other questions? Anyone else have questions or feedback? Is there any business that wouldn't fit well into the lean model? Eric asks, what kind of business might not be able to map?
That doesn't exist, because a startup business plan you have to have for any business in the world, B2B, B2C, a service, a product, an experience. It doesn't matter. You still have to have your business plan. The business model, the lean canvas, is just a way you're depicting the entire business plan. The business model itself is how you're creating, delivering, and capturing value. So if you don't know those elements of whatever business you're starting, then you're setting yourself up for potentially failure and higher risk, because you have unknown areas in the business.
Yeah, and I would say if this workshop has whetted your appetite to learn more, I would really recommend the Carlson Center's Entrepreneurship Toolkit. And I just posted the link in there to their page on that. They're headed towards the 4th session, but when you sign up, they'll share a link with you to all the previous sessions as well, so you don't have to miss out. And I think they offer that every 2 months. But I felt like I knew a lot of stuff before going into it, but boy, am I learning a lot more. So it's a great program if you got any kind of business. All right, any other questions or feedback? Feel free to unmute yourself as long as you're kind and polite. If you have something you'd like to share with Brian or question. Let's see. All right. So I have a question for you guys. This workshop is kind of at an unusual time, and I'm wondering if anyone wants to give me feedback on, is a lunchtime workshop better? Is an after 5 workshop better? Or is this a great time? And I know it's probably not a great sample size because you all showed up at 4, but we're just trying to figure out what's the best time as things go along. So feel free to share that in the chat. Okay, so we got a little bit of feedback about later in the afternoon or lunchtime. Somebody really likes it. Of course, Rakesh, you're in Orlando, so, or in Florida, so. All right. Okay, got some good feedback. All right, Brian, it looks like we're probably going to end up a little bit early. What would you like to share with us as some final points of wisdom?
That I hope that whatever business you're starting, you definitely want to make sure you're getting out into the market and getting the feedback from the customers, because everything that is in your head is just your own opinion, and that's not good enough. So get out there and validate and document the insights and findings so that you can reduce your own risk.
Great point. That's the thing I see most with entrepreneurs. They may have spent tons of money building their product, and they get to market and they find out they haven't built what the customers want. So it's not just about doing it a certain way. It's about saving yourself time and money by finding out if you have something that people want to pay for. So listen to Brian. He's got good advice.